joining us today for this panel on Fintech's role in ensuring an inclusive economy. First, I'd like to welcome our two panelists, Yanela Frias from Prudential. She's the president of Prudential Retirement, and Keogh, who's the head of global philanthropy at JPMorgan Chase. We would like to spend this time really talking about the role that Fintech can play in addressing social and financial equality issues. And obviously, over the past several months with the pandemic and ongoing conversation about racial justice in America, these topics have become even more important, and the work that we can all do has become more urgent. We have JPMorgan and Prudential here today in part because they are two leading institutions when it comes to supporting both the financial health of their own employees, but also all of the work that is done more broadly around issues of financial health, particularly for communities that are low to moderate income and communities of color. And also, this is part of a discussion around the Financial Solutions Lab, which is an effort to identify and scale innovative solutions that improves financial health for low to moderate income and disadvantaged communities. It's a program that's been around for now its sixth year with the support of JPMorgan Chase. And we are very grateful to have both Yanela and Karen here with us today. First, I'd just like to ask you, Yanela, from your perspective, what role can Fintech play as it relates to inclusion, and where do you see Prudential's role in this work?
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be part of the Emerge conference this year, and thank you for the question. Now, before I answer the question, I know that many of those in attendance are essential workers or have family members who have been working on the front lines of the crisis. So on behalf of everyone at Prudential, I thank you for everything you're doing. I also want to acknowledge everyone who has demanded racial justice and equality in this country and around the world, especially in these last few weeks of tremendous turmoil. Now, addressing your question, we can't really speak about financial vulnerability of underserved communities without recognizing how unequal treatment in schools, in hiring practices, in healthcare, and the criminal justice system all contribute to too many Americans living too close to the edge. Garry, as you know, around 2 billion adults worldwide are unbanked or underbanked. And this means they do not have access to the financial products and services that would help them manage risk or participate in economic opportunity. Now, there are a lot of reasons for this, including market inefficiencies, limited product innovation, and high delivery costs. And as we mentioned earlier, unequal access for communities of color. But this is starting to change. The increase in mobile and internet penetration and cheaper digital and technology services are changing how we all access financial services. That's the good news. However, there is still a significant digital divide in this country that we cannot overlook. And we're seeing it play out right now with the barriers that many lower income individuals face in trying to access government programs and stimulus benefits related to the coronavirus crisis. So I see fintech startups addressing market inefficiencies and reaching more customers across all demographics, which will lead to more inclusive services over time. And I'll share an example. I think of how Assurance IQ, a fintech subsidiary of Prudential, is eliminating the inefficiencies of conventional models and enabling direct, digital, and personalized engagement to create a better experience for selecting insurance and other financial services, all through the use of technology and data analytics. And one of the outcomes of their approach is that Prudential can serve more people across the entire socioeconomic spectrum. Prudential has also invested in promising fintech companies through our impact investing activities, and we've seen impressive results in terms of engaging communities that do not typically have easy access to financial services. And we have accomplished this through our support of organizations like Aura, Quona, Lend Street, APIS, and Accion. And finally, we also support financial inclusion nonprofit organizations like Neighborhood Trust Financial Partners, MoneyThink, the Financial Clinic, and Saver Life, including working with them on their efforts to use digital services to engage diverse populations.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Yanela. A lot of those organizations are ones that we also work with, and I know that JPMorgan works with as well. So, Karen, I'd like to ask you the same question of, from your perspective, what role can fintech play as it relates to inclusion?
Sure. Well, thanks, Garry. Thanks for having me here today. It's a wonderful conference, and I'm glad you were able to open it up to so many more people now that we're doing it virtually. We have a great partnership with the Financial Health Network, and I just want to do a shout out to my team, Colleen Briggs, Miriam Freeman, and our newest addition, Sarah Willis, who do work with your team every day. I'm really proud of the work we do together, and now with Prudential. So let me start here. Even before the global pandemic, we knew too many people were being left behind. We knew households were vulnerable because the crisis this crisis really hit hardest to communities, particularly communities of color. And when you think about the important conversation about racial discrimination, racial injustice that Yanela pointed to after the tragic killing of George Floyd, what it tells me is we have an imperative to address uncomfortable issues and questions. We need to talk about them. We need to bring them to light. We as a company have made a commitment to be part of the solution, and I think business has to be part of the solution. Our CEO has said, we are watching, we are listening, and we are committed to fighting racism. And I think it's really important that we look at communities as being the strength of where this can all start. We need to incubate and get closer to the ground and work with people who are dealing with these issues day in and day out, who have trouble making payments for a variety of things, who are being left out and shut out and don't have the opportunities. We think financial health is the foundation to building resilient families and communities. And so I'll start there. And we believe we're in a unique position as a company to improve the financial health of people who need it the most. And we're committed as a firm to leverage the full spectrum of JPMorgan to do that. So everything from CR, where we have the Institute, which leverages and serves up really important data, to our philanthropic investments, to the Policy Center, which I'll talk about maybe a little bit later, our impact investing team, and then you pull that through to our products and services. So it's that continuum of support across the company that I want to lift up here today. Last year, you'll remember, we made a $125 million commitment to identify, evaluate, and scale innovations to help consumers improve their financial health. And a key part of that approach is leveraging the power of technology to drive innovation. As Yanela very well said, yes, it's the digital divide. It's almost like the digital chasm now. This crisis right now has shown that people who do not have smartphones, who do not have reliable Wi-Fi, who do not have the ability to get connected to a nonprofit organization or a resource to tell them just how they can manage their money, it's even more apparent. But I'm inspired by that because I think this crisis will make us build back better and together. In managing this crisis, we see digital tools and services are at the core of everything. We see that at our business, right? Where digital channels are seeing this significant uptick in use. We're making real-time improvements. We're monitoring where there are gaps, and we want to work with fintech companies to do the same.
Thanks very much, Karen. As part of that investment you guys made in financial health, obviously part of that was the Financial Solutions Lab. And I wanted to talk with Yanela a little bit about sort of the role you see the Financial Solutions Lab, particularly in our shared mission around inclusive fintech and improving the financial health of low to moderate income individuals. Obviously, you guys do a tremendous amount of work in Newark. You've been a long-term partner of the Financial Health Network as it relates to a lot of research around insurance and inclusion. So just wanted to get your thoughts about how the Financial Solutions Lab and Prudential could work together in the future.
And I'm proud to say that Prudential has had a terrific partnership with the Financial Health Network for many years, as you mentioned. And we share a focus on broadening people's views of the factors and policies that affect financial health. And frankly, we see the partnership as being very closely aligned to our mission of solving the financial challenges of our changing world. And more recently, we've been really impressed with the work of the Financial Solutions Lab, including the lab's success in producing consumer insights, accelerating cross-sector collaboration, and scaling the financial solutions for underserved communities. So that's why I'm incredibly excited today to announce to this audience that Prudential is committing $10 million over 5 years to the Financial Solutions Lab. And all of us at Prudential are thrilled to expand our relationship. And when you think about it, given the growing economic inequalities in our country, Prudential is increasingly focused on equipping historically underserved communities and individuals with the tools and support that they need to get on a path to economic and social mobility. As a financial services organization, we have a responsibility to build solutions that serve all Americans. And our work with the Financial Solutions Lab will get capital into the hands of startups led by people from different backgrounds, ethnicities, and genders. And this will help fund and scale solutions for low to moderate income individuals and further our combined reach and impact. And working with the lab and with partners like Karen at JPMorgan Chase, I am confident that we will make progress on tackling the systemic barriers to financial inclusion.
Yanela, thank you so much for the support you and Prudential have given us. The support for a long period of time, particularly in this environment, is uniquely helpful for us to carry out our mission. And your team have been great partners as we've sort of figured out how to do this all together. And also to put this in context, this lab, which is sort of an experiment in and of itself, JPMorgan helped start this in 2014 and has made a 10-year, $50 million commitment in total. So Karen, you can speak from both looking back, but also looking forward around sort of what's your view of the Financial Solutions Lab and the role it can play, and how we have worked together and how we can work together with JPMorgan in the future.
Well, first, we're really excited to have Prudential join us. This is really exciting. I think we share a lot of common vision on mission and goals, and we're just thrilled to not only have your support in terms of capital, but also in terms of expertise for these fintech companies. Often we find out that folks are drawn to the lab because of a number of reasons, but the technical expertise and support from companies like JPMorgan and now Prudential is really invaluable to them as they grow and scale their companies. So I just really want to underscore that. As you said, Garry, our commitment increased last year for the Financial Solutions Lab, which we helped found over 5 years ago. I can't believe it's been 5 years already. To date, I want to give you some statistics. The lab has supported 43 early stage fintech companies. They've collectively reached more than 4.5 million people, helping to save more than $1 billion. So I know if we were all in person, there'd be a big round of applause. So I'm applauding all of us, particularly all the 43 winners and all the work they've done. But their impact reaches beyond just those companies and their customers. The impact pushes companies like ours to think about how do we create an autosave and look to SaverLife and other companies that are shaping those solutions. That's tremendous. The autosave feature at JPMorgan Chase has saved our customers $1.5 billion. Customers are saving that much money because of something we created off the insights of companies like SaverLife and others. It's also pushing us to adapt in real time to meet the needs of our customers as the fintech companies are serving their customers as well. We look at examples like Neighborhood Trust and SaverLife's partnership to provide emergency coaching and rebuild savings, and Propel's partnership with Give Directly to distribute assistance for immediate needs. Really good real-time examples of how companies are adapting, particularly now during this crisis. And today, I'm proud to announce that we're going to unveil the selection of cohort number 6. Their challenge was around fintech solutions supporting students and workers during this very critical time. I mean, a challenge that we stood up many months before COVID, right? And to think that this is where we landed on something that's so timely and important right now. So I'm gonna share the names, and I'm just gonna say, Garry, I think folks can come to you and your team to get much more information, but I'm just gonna unveil the winners here. So the first is Climb Credit, which is an alternative lender financing upskilling and professional development education. Edquity, a platform that administers emergency grants at universities and colleges and social service referrals for college students who are facing financial shocks. Finley, a payment and business management platform for neighborhood businesses and independent providers. And lastly, Summer, a platform that directs borrowers to the best student loan repayment or forgiveness option. As I said, there's a lot more information we can all learn. I think we can turn to some of the conference materials and to your team, Garry, to share that out. But just really excited that we have these 4 new joiners to our FinLab.
Thank you for making that announcement, Karen. That's been a joint work stream for a very long time, dating back to October of last year, particularly between our two teams, of trying to figure out how do we find the largest pool of people with the most creative ideas to help the largest group of people, and sorting through that. And fortunately, the way the lab is constructed today, partly with the additional investment from JPMorgan and then the support from Prudential, we're now able to also offer things like the nonprofit Fintech exchange and the collaborative, where if an investment through the accelerator is not the ideal solution, we can find ways to work with folks. And both of your teams have been very helpful as we find other ways to partner. So, now that we are sort of larger partners, Yanela, just wanted to get your thoughts about, how we can continue to work together in the larger mission, and particularly this unique moment. Obviously, an insurer at its heart and a retirement provider is helping people manage risk. And we are at the moment experiencing risks that, except for my great-grandparents who experienced something like this in 1918, there's a set of risks that many people have not faced. And obviously insurers and banks specialize in that. I was just wondering how you think about how we can work together, stay relevant in this moment, but also we're trying to build something, 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Congratulate all the winners. That is really fantastic. And Karen, we too at Prudential are really excited to partner with JPMorgan and the Financial Solutions Lab, and it's going to be real fun and really exciting to work with all these fintech companies who have the ability to really change the world, and bring new services and new opportunities. So we're very, very excited. Garry, to your question, I think I would start by acknowledging that nearly every aspect of the well-being of Americans is being challenged by what we're experiencing from the pandemic. It really just sheds a light on the challenges that we face as a country, from the loss of loved ones and livelihoods, from the social distancing that has been required, and from the outpouring of grief and anger resulting from the recent examples of racial bias and violence. And this is enormously stressful, physically, mentally, and emotionally. It is very challenging, and it is a very difficult time in our country. Now, financially, we all know the statistics that prior to the pandemic, 2/3 of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck. 60% didn't have enough money for a $500 emergency, and over half of workers had no retirement savings. And the economic impact of this pandemic will be staggering, and it will not affect all equally. And that is on top of the pandemic impacting a disproportionate number of Black and Hispanic lives. And this is simply not acceptable. Prudential has always believed that financial security should be within the reach of everyone, regardless of race, background, or socioeconomic class. And the reality is that these are long-standing issues that need bold solutions in the public and private sector to drive real and lasting change. So we're very much looking forward to working with the Financial Solutions Lab and with JPMorgan, and really bringing our skill sets together, an insurance company, a bank, and really a new ways to address these systemic issues and to close the racial wealth gap that we face, and really to help all Americans recover from this yet again setback of the pandemic and become more resilient, not just today, but in the long term as well.
Thanks, Yanela. I wanted to ask you the same question, Karen. It's slightly different because we've been partners longer, particularly on the Financial Solutions Lab. But thinking about, not just how we respond to this, but how we're here to respond going forward. I mean, one of the things I talk about with my team is right now there's enormous amount of energy broadly in the economy and broadly throughout society to address these issues. Unfortunately, the past tells us that many times that energy dissipates quite quickly, and the underlying challenges are still there. And part of this partnership is that we're here in long run, and you guys have been working with us now into the 6th year, and Prudential is going to be working in the lab for 5 more. So part of it is we're structured to try to keep at this work. But I just wanted to get your thoughts about, being responsive in the moment is important, but also we have bigger missions, and how do we keep supporting that? And how do we work together for those big long hauls? Because there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Garry. And I certainly understand the sentiment of, when the headlines fade, when people turn to the next issue, will the crisis and the issues that have been raised today and right now be overlooked? And that's a real concern, especially when you look back in history. The way we think about it is near, now, and far. What can we do today? What can we do in the short term? And what commitments can we make in the long term? I do think it feels a little bit different. I hope it feels a little bit different. And I hope that the public and private sector will step forward with some bold suggestions, especially as we all have to build back together. I mean, I think that's the key. In some ways, if COVID were not happening and we all had to focus on the economy so directly, perhaps maybe these things intersected with a purpose that we can be better. I think the crisis is pushing us to double down, to be more responsive, to be more flexible, to be more intentional. I do think this is an inflection point in our history, in our country's history, in our world history. As Yanela pointed to earlier, we're seeing protests and outrage, not only in the United States, but around the world. And I think that's very powerful. When you consider that government benefits are going to start to lapse in July, I mean, that benefits cliff is going to be enormous. With employment projections continuing to be weak, we really have to be together and build back together to advance not only our economy, but I think most fundamentally financial health as its foundation. Two things to look forward to. I think looking at solutions through the lens of policy. I mentioned earlier, we have the Policy Center. About a year ago, we stood up this center under the leadership of Heather Higginbottom, who you may know, Garry, and some of the folks in the audience may know. The first focus out of the Policy Center was to look at second chance hiring. The fundamental mission of the Policy Center is to develop and advance solutions for an inclusive economy. Second chance hiring was really focused around barriers to employment. And one area that we really zeroed in on was the impact of court-related fines and fees, which I know folks in this audience have also spent time working on. So the idea really is to leverage policy as a way to scale solutions. And that being one example, but perhaps leaning more into both financial health and just economic redistribution and how we rebuild together. The second thing I would just point to is how we think about the lab going forward. We want to deepen our engagement, particularly with diverse stakeholders, and innovate where solutions don't exist today. I mean, out of this crisis, I know people will come forward and say, this was, such a moment, and yet because of X, Y, and Z, I couldn't get the coaching, I couldn't get the support, I couldn't get whatever that fill in that blank. And so I hope that we all lean into that and find a way to scale those solutions, invent those solutions, build those solutions with, again, diverse stakeholders. I know that's been a real focus of the lab, and hopefully out of this conversation, we'll go even deeper there. And I'll just end by saying we're really excited to do this with the Financial Health Network, with Prudential. We're excited, we're inspired, and I think all of these threads coming together will lead to possibilities we never even thought of before.
Well, thank you both for all your support. I wanted to speak a little bit to something that you were saying, Karen, which is sort of how do we respond in the moment, be flexible. One of the programs that we are launching this year is called the Collaborative, where we're trying to bring together diverse stakeholders to work on areas where there's not a proven solution, either because of a market failure or because the problem is new. So both Prudential and JPMorgan have been working closely with us, and we're working on this benefits cliff problem of the unemployment insurance supplement rolling off at the end of July, at least under the current legislation, and that student loan forbearance is going to roll off at the end of September. So you have this confluence of two benefits in which there's a high correlation between unemployment insurance, the need for unemployment insurance, and the ability to pay a student loan. And so trying to figure out where those interact and help, because both the unemployment insurance program is deeply broken from a user experience standpoint, and then the student loan payment experience is very broken. And what we've also found is those are two cohorts of people that are disproportionately people of color. And in many cases, those who are in the most distress are often women who are responsible for their households and their broader communities, and the stress and strain that both student loans and a lack of employment can really put on folks. So in the last 10 weeks, our three teams have been able to put something together so that we can see if there are partnerships to create, and it's across government, across our institutions, nonprofits, for-profits, to try to figure out, what do we do here? Because we're talking about tens of millions of people. And so some of that innovation is just getting those people in the room in the moment and saying, what can we do together? And so we're very grateful that both of your teams have been supportive, but also flexible enough. Often when you are running a large program, there's not flexibility to react in the moment. And so that has been very exciting. I think the other thing I would say about this moment of distress is often in our history when we've had these moments, it's also a moment for great creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I always talk about the Chicago fire in 1871, which almost burned the city to the ground, but the modern city grew out of that. Skyscrapers grew out of that, modern architecture, fire departments, all these things. And so we have this opportunity together to sort of run into the breach and try to build something new and better than what we had before, while acknowledging the failures that are in the systems we have. So with that, as we close out, I just wanted to see if either of you had closing thoughts. So I'd start with you, Yanela.
Garry, and first of all, thank you again for having me. It's just wonderful to be here, and also really excited about the partnership. And as I mentioned earlier, Prudential's mission is to solve the financial challenges of our changing world. And the reality is that we have a lot going on, and a world that is really changing in front of us. And this partnership is a tremendous opportunity to really have an impact. So I'm tremendously excited. I am hopeful at the potential that I see in the partnership, and just to hear you talk about the last 10 weeks and the things that we've already accomplished together is really exciting. So again, thank you. We're really excited about everything we can bring and the change that we can bring to our country through the partnership of our organizations.
Yeah, I think what I would say is it's no longer theoretical. I think a lot of folks in this audience and a lot of folks have been working on these issues around financial health for a long time. And this crisis has really illuminated how many vulnerable people there are in our country, and even further, how they might be impacted, even if they thought they weren't vulnerable. I have a savings account. I'm able to pay my mortgage. I'm able to, manage my finances. And yet a crisis like this really illuminates how fragile and vulnerable so many more people are. So I would also echo what Yanela said. We're very excited about the partnership. I'm excited about what's happened the last 10 weeks. And I'm hopeful and inspired that better tools and better solutions will come out of all of this.
Well, thank you both for joining, and for everyone who's watching out there. If you have more interest in both the new cohort and Prudential's joining the lab, please take a look at our website. So both the Financial Health Network, but there's also a Financial Solutions Lab website that you can take a look at. Thank you all, and we hope to see you soon in person.